Hey everybody, CVH here, and in today's video we're in the Steam community because we've got some new balance changes to discuss for Elder Scrolls Legends. 6 cards were just revealed to be nerfed today, or I guess yesterday when you guys are finally seeing this full finished product edited video, and they were announced right before I started streaming, so I'll be doing something a bit different in this video, contrary to what I've done in past videos about balance changes. Instead of talking to you guys in a video like I'm doing right now, I had a big discussion on stream to start the stream off for like a couple hours actually about all the card changes and the implications of them, and I'll be editing that down and giving you guys my first thoughts on the card changes as I just started to look at them from the stream. And don't worry if you haven't seen the patch notes yet. As I typically do at the beginning, I go over all the changes, what they were exactly, and then give my thoughts on them and the potential metagame implications. So hopefully you guys enjoy this discussion on the patch notes and the nerfed cards. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you agree with what I'm saying, if you like the nerfs, if you dislike the nerfs, just let me know. Let's start the conversation. And as always, if you enjoy the video, feel free to leave a like and stay subscribed for more Legends videos. Follow my stream in the description, and I'll see you next time. Okay, so again, hopefully that, actually a little bit more, there we go. Alright, that should be zoomed in enough. If it's not, I'm very sorry. A balance change for ants. Alright, well now you guys can definitely see at least the important stuff. I'll tell you if it's something you gotta read. Yeah, you know this will be heavily edited, C-Max, you know it. Okay, so again, the changes that have occurred. Hist Grove now costs 4 magicka, up from 3. Thieves Guild Recruit. When it draws a card that costs 7 or more, it only reduces the cost of it by 1 instead of 2. Thorn Hist Mage, same card, except it's now a 2/4 instead of a 2/5. Ulfric's Housecarl, same card, except now a 3/3 instead of a 3/4. Moving on, Northwind Outpost now costs 3 magicka instead of 2 magicka, and Unstoppable Rage, which I believe is the last one, is up from 7 magicka to 8 magicka. Alright, so, I can't really talk about these without drawing comparisons to my own article, because I need to toot my own horn a little bit. And that was my Shake Things Up theoretical patch notes from the 4th, which was, I guess, like 10 days ago. So for my ideas, a couple of them are the same. Obviously, I mentioned Soul Tear, which was not touched, and that's a big issue. But Hist Grove was, in fact, buffed exactly from 3 to 4. Well, nerfed from 3 to 4. The magicka cost was increased. Ulfric's Housecarl, half of my change did work there. The stats were changed to a 3/3, but the first part was not fixed, where I said it should be after an enemy rune is destroyed, so prophecies could interact. That part, to my knowledge, is not being changed, but just the stats were. Assault was not touched. Unstoppable Rage, again, they did most of they did the big part of my change, I think, which is the magicka increase from 7 to 8. And then the breakthrough thing was like sort of an afterthought. I was trying to think of a way to just like take the edge off the OTKs, but honestly, I think the magicka cost is enough. And you know, I had more time to think about these, and I don't have their resources, even though I play a ton of this game. I didn't get to test these at all behind the scenes, like I'm sure they have. So yeah, that was probably an oversight. And I like what they did with not changing Crusader's Assault, because it is a cool card, and I'll get into that more a little bit later. And Thieves Guild Recruit was actually my entire change right there. So I guess basically, all right. So this article on BetweenTheLanes.net. Again, Thieves Guild Recruit, same change. Unstoppable Rage, the core of it's the same. Ulfric's Housecarl, half of it's the same. Hist Grove, exact same change. Alright, so, what this tells me is that either I had the premonition of these changes, because I just knew what needed to be changed, thus making me good at card design, and they should hire me, or the other side of that coin, maybe they liked my changes so much they decided to implement them because of the article, in which case it shows that I'm good at card design and they should hire me. Either way, my DMs are open, guys. So back to the actual article. Obviously, I'm fine with the Hist Grove change. I feel like I rambled on a little bit too much in my article because you can see they did like these 2 paragraphs down here and I wrote like this massive wall about Hist Grove. Basically, I talk about Hearthstone a lot and how wild growth isn't necessarily too fun. It is simultaneously one of the main win conditions and the means with which to achieve that win condition. Treeminder already exists on 3. Like having 6 wild growths that you can play effectively on turn 2 with the ring is kind of absurd. And it is a monthly reward card, so unfortunately. I just mentioned that because Salt, right? If you didn't get your hands on it, everyone has to craft it. Over the past month, ramp has increased both in popularity and win rate, and so this card knows we're getting some changes, starting with Hist Grove. I didn't feel like you were. It didn't feel like you were paying it too much for Hist Grove's powerful late game ability. At 4, Hist Grove will still perform its powerful late game role, but should feel a little less like a free inclusion in ramp decks. So, like, obviously, if your main game plan is ramp, this card is still a win condition and the means with which to attain that win condition by itself, so probably still included. But yeah, I think 4 is probably fine. Everyone's like, it'll kill Hist Grove, but I really don't think it would actually kill Hist Grove. That's why I suggested it. I think all the nerfs I suggested, probably the cards remain playable, and this was one of the more akin to what I said, so I'm a-okay with that change. I'm also okay with Thieves Guild. I would have liked to see a little bit more of an explanation here. I mean, I gave like a giant wall of text again on Thieves Guild Recruit, but one of the things I like about this nerf is that it's not like one of the cool powerhouse cards that feels good to play. This card is kind of just something you play early that you don't really attribute it to winning games, but like it never feels good when your opponent plays a 7-cost Red Brahmin or Taz Cat or an 8-cost or what a 10-cost Odaving. You know what I mean, right? Like it never feels good. You're never like, oh, I could have played around that. It's essentially random. As drawing the card from the top of your deck is random, you have no idea if that's going to be a thing. So this is like actually my favorite nerf on the page, I think. I just think this card had been overlooked for too long. When I first saw it, I thought it was like Novice Engineer, but insane. Which in reality it is, but like when I first started playing, there were 2-cost 2/2 Murkwater Savages and Crystal Tower Crafters, and if you didn't play one of those cards on turn 2, like what are you really doing, right? A lot of the decks now, the Ram Scout decks currently, the Rage decks, these can take advantage of it. The problematic Snowball 2-costs were dealt with a year ago, new cards have been released, and now a lot of the new decks can just do absurdly unfun things regarding unstoppable Rage combos. Like before, and this is what I mentioned in this too, because I suggested the 8-cost Rage. Before, you can Thieves Guild recruit down a Rage to 5. Now, with this costing 8 and Thieves Guild reducing by 1, at minimum, it can cost 7. That's pretty awesome, right? So gone are the days of these insane, like, 1-turn Rage combos. Like, you could still 1-turn, like, Fighters Guild Rage, right? But that's just removal. So I like that, and like the reason I like Thieves Guild as a card to nerf is, again, it's not one of the cooler cards, it's not one of the show-off cards like a Hist Grove or, Rage or whatever one of those is. But it's a card that is sort of an instant inclusion as a 3 of, even though I've heard some people are playing less in Ram Scout and Rage Archer. These are just like, they're in the decks, and yeah, more often than not, they don't reduce something, but when they do, you're just not going to play around it. It doesn't make any logical sense to say, well, it's turn 7, or my opponent's at 7, I should play around Red Brahmin, or I need to play around a 5-cost Rage. Like, you're just not going to be able to do that in a way that allows you to effectively maintain your game plan. So, like, there's just kind of a BS card, honestly. There's no real other way to say it. Like, it doesn't seem that BS. Just a lot of the time when you reduced a card to 7, or reduced Rage from 7 to 5, you blame the Rage combos, when in reality, those would get a lot less insane without this card reducing by 2. But I actually like this nerf, and I think Thieves Guild remains playable in certain decks. I just don't think it'll cheese as many games, and that's totally fine, right? Like, yeah, the reduction doesn't happen that much, so you're not really playing it to reduce things by 2. It's just like occasionally Thieves Guild just leads to you winning the game randomly, but overall it's still a good card, and that part of it has remained the same. So I like that. So Thorn Hist Mage. This is the first of the 3 that we've talked about so far. That deviates pretty hard from what I wrote. So basically, this is the other Ram Scout nerf. This is sort of a hybrid nerf, if we're talking about the big 3 still, from Ram Scout and Rage Archer, and a couple of the decks on the side. Obviously, there are other decks, but in the context of the big 3, Ram Scout, Rage, and Crusader, this affects Rage and Ramp. Now, Thorn Hist Mage only affects Ramp. My other suggested nerf to Ramp, besides Hist Grove and Thieves Guild, was Soul Tear. And I had a few nerfs for that, some of which I still think are reasonable, especially I think the big one, when the text added to the end that reads when a creature dies, banish it. But they didn't find, apparently, reason to nerf Soul Tear. And a lot of people are going to complain about that, but this affects Ram Scout way more than the Soul Tear nerf that I proposed, I'm pretty sure. So you say Hist Mage did nothing wrong, but even, like, wow, right? Hist Mage was pretty pushed. And think about it, how many decks play Soul Tear where you're like, wow, that card is oppressive and unstoppable, besides Ram Scout? Clearly something is a problem in Scout. And some people have said Drain Vitality in their shouts too. But yeah, I think this definitely affects the Ram Scout deck more negatively than any of the nerfs that I proposed to Solitaire, even in combination. Because the ability to get to the late game in the first place, to where you can finally Solitaire back your stabilization bats or Solitaire that incredible value stuff, that is made possible by cards like Thorn Hist Mage. And there's a reason that decks like Ramp Warrior and Ramp Sorcerer have a theoretical harder time getting there, because they don't have a card that simultaneously ramps and defends, and also it's not even bad in other matchups because of the ramp and because it continues to grow. Like, it's a reasonable 5-cost threat when you have to get aggressive in the mirror or something. It'll just be there, and it'll obviously grow because you're ramping every turn plus extra ramp. So I think this does hurt more than the Solitaire nerf. And honestly, I'm fine with Solitaire's card design. Like, when it was released, it was one of my favorite cards in Skyrim, even though it was obviously a little too good at 2 Magicka, but it's graveyard recursion, it's choices, more decisions, and using Solitaire correctly does take a level of skill. Using Hist Mage correctly is just drawing it by turn 4 or 5. So, between the two cards, Solitaire is actually way more interesting. And I'm kind of worried for Scout because this is a serious nerf. This card now has less stats than a Dark Guardian, and it costs 2 more. It still ramps, obviously, you still probably play it in Ramp Scout, but the power of that deck has been seriously retuned. Between mostly Hist Grove and Thorn Hist Mage. Now, Hist Grove by itself, that nerf, it does affect other ramp decks too, but this is a serious thing. This is what really made Ramp Scout over the top. So I'm okay with that. And I am honestly okay with Solitaire currently being the way it is, because how many other classes really do you play against where you think, wow, Solitaire is being super oppressive, right? Are the Ramp Warriors doing like crazy Solitaire shenanigans? You can loop Parthenax in theoretically any class that uses Endurance, but the only one that's been able to consistently do that enough to be a part of the meta has been Scout. And there's gotta be some reason for that, right? There's gotta be some reason for that. I do think I do think the banishment at the end of Solitaire kind of just makes sense, both from like a lore-friendly thing. Okay, so I think these nerfs, if anything, they go a bit far on Ramp Scout, but like one can say that a lot of the big core components of the deck have been touched. I don't think nerfing Parthenax is right. I don't think nerfing Solitaire too much was right. I still wanted Solitaire to be playable. I think the banishment thing makes sense, but I don't think it makes it that much worse. But I'm not overly concerned about Solitaire outside of that stuff. So I think the Hist Mage nerf will be very interesting. But Ulfric's Housecarl down to a 3/3. I like this nerf. I think it's good. It makes it less trading friendly and, you know, weak to Ice Storm, Crushing Blow, all that stuff. But I also think that I would have liked to see it say after an enemy urn is destroyed. I don't like the inconsistency there. I think keeping it in line with a card like Relentless Raider and Dawnstar Healer would have been probably important. I just don't get the reasoning, really. I don't think it is mentioned here. But with a card like Dawnstar Healer, you attack it and you gain 3 life, but only if Dawnstar Healer is still alive after the entire rune destruction happens, which means if they get a prophecy, they can use that to remove the Dawnstar Healer, and the effect will be nullified, it won't happen. So I think that would be interesting. Anyway, I think this was a good nerf to the card. It was half of what I suggested in the article. The other one just makes sense from a design standpoint to keep it consistent with Dawnstar and Relentless Raider. But, I mean, I guess they really want this to be a powerful card draw option. I think the stat reduction is a good thing for this card. I think the bigger nerf to Crusader, though, honestly, is this Northwind Outpost nerf, which we'll talk about right now. I didn't mention this in the article, but... And this goes about nerfing cool cards as well, right? Like, Crusader's Assault was probably the most contested change that I made when I posted this article on Reddit, because everyone likes Crusader's Assault. It's a cool-ass card. Like, this card just feels good to play. It's good in aggro, it's good in mid-range, it's good in control decks. You can combo it with Unstoppable Rage, too. And nerfing this card is just kind of sad. So I like that Northwind Outpost was touched, and Northwind Outpost getting to 3 Magicka, like, that's a big deal. I think that's a bigger deal, honestly. You know, they did touch a bit of the card draw as well, but I think this is, you know, it's huge, right? Because the backbone of these mono-red token aggro decks is basically just Nord Firebrand, and then more Nord Firebrands. It's just that much more inefficient. And it does make sense to nerf a bit of Aggro Crusader too, because they are nerfing, you know, Ramp Scout. We don't need Aggro Crusader to be quite as good as it is right now to counter the oppressive Ramp Scout. I think this is the age-old problem with Nord Firebrand is that it's a 0-cost charge that you can get off of tons of different cards. And many people have suggested just nerfing Nord Firebrand, but then like the collateral damage is insane, right? Your Raiding Party is bad all of a sudden, Mark Hearth is bad, Nord Firebrand himself is bad, Goblin Skulk and Aggro decks is bad, Northwind Outpost would have been bad, Merrick Battle Mage, the entire deck is pretty bad, Market Archers, the entire deck is bad, like, That's huge if you nerf Nord Firebrand in any way. So they're kind of locked into, unless they want to do all of that, nerfing a really powerful support card that just makes the Nords absurd. You know, Divine Fervor has been nerfed a long time ago to 5 Magicka. We're not really concerned about Divine Fervor Firebrands, even though some decks do that. Hidden Trail is its own thing. But I think this is a positive change, right? And it doesn't just affect the Crusader variant, which is another problem of my Crusader's Assault and Nerf. First of all, collateral damage. Decks like Control Crusader and Midrange Crusader, that's a problem, because that card is fine in those decks. Other problem is that it doesn't affect any other of the Nord Firebrand-centric aggro decks. If you only nerfed this in Crusader's Assault, you'd still have the same core deck in Archer, Battle Mage if you want, Warrior if you want, like, it just exists, right? So nerfing the Northwind Outpost, it does a little bit to nerf all of those. So I like that. I'm reading a bit of chat too. I mean, this card was just really, really powerful. And I just seen a lot of play recently. And then the Unstoppable Rage nerf. I will say, I didn't mention this in the article, but I'm a little bit surprised I didn't touch Archer's Gambit. So for Rage Archer, the only nerfs we see, the ones that I suggested were just Thieves Guild Recruit and Unstoppable Rage. And that looks to be the only 2 cards from here that are played in Rage Archer currently. But it's been said a lot by a lot of people that Archer's Gambit is probably one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful card in the deck. Okay. Unstoppable Rage is one of our most controversial cards. Setting up combos with Lethal, Drain, Breakthrough, and Movement can be really fun and satisfying. Oh yeah. But the huge swings in life total and board state can create, the card can be frustrating. In the past, Unstoppable Rage has been played at a rate where we felt comfortable with the experience. Recently, it's gained both win rate and popularity. At 8 cost, Rage will keep its power, but will be a little harder to use on the same turn with other cards from your hand. And that also goes back to the Thieves Guild Recruit change, too. Whether or not Thieves Guild is reducing this, or like a Vigilant Giant or something like that. So yeah, this is exactly the change I proposed, except I also proposed an additional change to the breakthrough damage, which was kind of weird. I think this is like the least thought about change that I proposed. I just needed something to take the edge off, but I'm fine with this, right? If anything, I'd like it to still be good. I don't want them to accidentally nerf this card into unplayability. Gambit's still really good, and the core of the deck is still really good. And honestly, one of this deck's biggest problems on the ladder was Ramp Scout. Like, it was hard to win that matchup, honestly. And while this deck did see a couple nerfs, one of those nerfs also affects Ramp Scout, and they also have to deal with the 4-cost Hist Grove and the Thorn Hist Mage nerf as well, which does impact that deck. I mean, I'm pretty sure Ramp Scout's probably still playable on the ladder, which means it'll probably still beat Rage Archer more often than not. But yeah, the Rage nerf, I think it just makes sense, you know? You have to play around it a little bit less. It's still a good card. I think it is a welcome part of the meta, honestly. And here's the thing with this, too. All of a sudden, Control Mage can be a thing, right? That's something I'm really happy about. Control Mage can actually be a thing. Because if they did what I did, and just nerf Solitaire a little bit, nerf Hist Grove a little bit, honestly, with these changes, I still don't know. Like, nerfing Thorn Hist Mage to that level might give room for Control Mage. I'm not sure about that. But I think it should diversify the meta a little bit. So overall, I think the Rage change was, you know, very simple, elegant. The card was a little bit too good. I mean, more often than not, I think you can play around it to some degree, but it can just blow you out sometimes. Just the main issue is, if you're going to nerf 2 cards in aggro decks, if you're going to nerf 3 cards in Ramp Scout decks, I mean, something probably has to happen. Otherwise, all those Ramp Scout changes will make Rage just a little too good. So you can't just leave one of the big 3 untouched. And I think this is a fine change. I think it's totally reasonable. So to summarize, fine with all the changes. Things I would have liked to see, like Hist Grove and Thieves Guild, I'm just perfectly happy with. I think those are just good changes. They were exactly what I suggested, so of course I'm fine with them. And Rage, again, good change, exactly what I suggested. I did not suggest the Outpost change, but it makes a hell of a lot of sense, so I'm totally fine with it. And the Thorn Hist Mage, I think, is pretty harsh, even though it's only a 1-stat difference. I think that is a pretty harsh change, but I think it's fine. You know, Ramp Scout's really, really good, and of all the decks, Ramp Scout's the one where you can't play a ladder deck that has a weak Ramp Scout matchup, because as it was, like, a weak Ramp Scout matchup is just like, you're just gonna lose against the deck. It was too efficient. It did what it wanted to do so much for the time. And Hist Grove and Thorn Hist Mage with those harsh nerfs, I think is a good thing. All of a sudden, you can sort of make the case to play a deck that might not always beat Ram Scout, because it's not going to be that oppressive. It's not going to be that oppressive. Its main support card, I mean, like, supporting the strategy, and its actual main support card, win condition, I think are rather important. Hist Grove nerf seems way more harsh. But, like, Hist Grove was never good against aggro, really. Like, you're never really happy to play Hist Grove on 3 against aggro, you just needed to do it. Obviously, you still, like, you can still do the early anti-aggro plays like Tree Minder, Dark Guardian, Wordwall Drain, Vitality, all that exists, but the Thorn Hist Mage is really the way to bridge to the late game while also having a strong defense. A 3-4 guard really is not contesting a whole lot. Definitely not what a 3-5 guard was, you know? Definitely not. Think about all the things that cost 4 that don't, or have 4 attack but not 5. So I mean, I like that you can play decks in the ladder that don't just straight up lose to Scout. I think that's a good thing. And of course, all the red aggro decks, and they nerfed the red aggro decks in a way that was probably their least interactive way to win. Like Northwind Outpost, man, it's just there. It's just there. Everything's bigger now. Deal with it, or it'll just continue its static effect the entire game. And I'm okay with not nerfing Solitaire. We'll see if it continues to be oppressive, but I think it's honestly just a cool card that was part of a deck that was just a little too efficient at getting to the late game. And the one thing I would like to see is Ulfric's Housecarl say after instead of win. I wish it did. I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. I don't think it's going to be like, oh, Mono Red is clearly the best deck in the game. I still think leaving the Drain Vitality and Word Walls and leaving the Archer's Gambits is a good move to combat these mono red decks, if nothing else. Also, like, Gambit, one thing about Archer's Gambit is that not only in Rage is it good, but if you nerf that card to like 3 or 4 or something, if you just like neuter Archer's Gambit in this deck, it also completely ruins the card in like aggro goblins or something. Some aggressive deck that uses Gambit for the movement buff with Dune Smuggler, or for the ping for the pilfer effects and stuff. So Gambit is a cool card. It's really, really good, but not nerfing it also leaves a couple other decks intact that might otherwise see some hard times. And they're not like top tier decks. It's not like, go Goblin Archer is so oppressive because of Archer's Gambit. You know, it's just a cool deck that you probably wouldn't want to play without Gambit. Personally, I still prefer the Assassin version anyway. But yeah, I think these are fine. I think besides saying after an Ulfric's Housecarl, I don't mind any of these. And I think Ulfric's Housecarl still, you know, reined in somewhat. It's a good card still, obviously. I think all of these cards, I don't know about Outpost, man, but I'd still play Hist Grove, Thorn Hist Mage, Thieves Guild, Housecarl, Rage. I mean, it depends on how good the super token heavy version of the deck are. Probably still fine.